General Hospital spoilers reveals that Nina is standing at a life-changing crossroads, where every choice, every action from her past is slowly resurfacing like distorted mirrors reflecting the truth she once tried to avoid. After a series of failed attempts to mend her relationship with Willow and reclaim her place in the family, Nina is realizing that the faith she once placed in motherhood, in the possibility of forgiveness, and in rebirth from the ruins, is now nothing but an illusion. She once believed that love could heal everything, that if she persisted long enough and loved enough, everyone would forget the mistakes she made. But reality is now revealing a painful truth: the harm caused cannot be erased with tears or promises. Nina now finds herself not only isolated in her fight to restore family bonds but also facing a much greater threat: the legal accusations that Drew is steadily making public, pushing her into direct confrontation with justice. One of the new pressures Nina is facing is that Drew has begun using previously hidden information as weapons. He not only suspects but is preparing to unveil evidence of the drugging incident Nina once committed to weaken his ability to lead in the past, a deed that seemed buried but is now the key to destroying her reputation and freedom entirely. If these accusations are proven true, Nina will not only face the risk of losing custody of her grandchild, losing Willow's trust, but could also be convicted and face severe criminal consequences. These possibilities are no longer hypothetical. They are real, unfolding day by day. And Nina knows she no longer has the luxury of living in illusion or clinging to vague hopes for forgiveness. At this moment, a fundamental shift is taking place in Nina's mindset and choices. She is forced to accept that she cannot control everything as she once did, that emotions are no longer enough to persuade others, and that she needs a real ally, not for comfort, but to protect her through the most practical and legal means. Nina needs a lawyer, and not just any lawyer, but someone capable, strong enough, and who truly understands her nature in order to rebuild from the shattered pieces around her. In the past, Nina handled everything herself, believing she could cleverly navigate any situation. But now she understands that alone is no longer enough. She is standing in the midst of a storm, and in order not to be overwhelmed, she needs a defense system, legal support being the first line of defense. One of the most significant adjustments occurring is the shift from emotional reactions to strategic thinking, from feeling to reason. Nina, once a woman driven by emotion, intuition, and personal beliefs, is now learning to protect herself through preparation, legal thinking, and the acceptance that she needs others to survive. Hiring a lawyer is not just about dealing with Drew but a declaration that she is ready to fight openly, legally, and systematically. Through this, Nina is redefining herself, no longer the woman seeking forgiveness but someone who knows how to defend herself when the world turns its back. Meanwhile, new troubles are erupting around her as a direct consequence of her past mistakes. Willow is becoming more distant and beginning to suspect that Nina is hiding more secrets. Jason, once an indirect ally, may withdraw his support if he realizes that Nina is dragging Michael and Willow into legal turmoil. Ava, a seemingly close friend, could exploit the situation to manipulate Nina in deals at Metro Court. And Drew, who holds the upper hand, will not stop until Nina is completely defeated. In this context, having a lawyer is not just necessary but a matter of survival. This shift towards seeking legal support is showing that Nina is entering a phase of profound transformation, from someone who always acted based on emotions, beliefs, and personal feelings, to someone who faces the truth, prepares for the worst, and understands that survival sometimes does not depend on being loved but on knowing how to protect oneself before everything collapses. New choices, new strategies, and fear are becoming the fuel for Nina's actions, not for anyone else, but for her own survival in a world that is gradually turning against everything she once believed in. This is the first step of a new journey, dramatic, painful, but not without hope, a journey to reclaim freedom, honor, and identity from the very pieces she once destroyed. The latest storyline around Nina is rapidly becoming a focal point in General Hospital, where the lingering obsessions of the past are now erupting into an uncontrollable chain of events. Facing pressures and troubles from all sides, Nina is slipping into a true state of emergency, where she can no longer manage things on her own or manipulate situations with emotions like before. The accusations from Drew about her drugging him are no longer rumors or vague threats but have become a direct blow that could strip her of not only her freedom but also her honor, social position, and the last hope of rekindling familial ties with Willow and the kids. Standing between the line of despair and the desire to regain control over her life, Nina is forced to accept one of the most pivotal adjustments she's ever made, seeking a lawyer who can not only represent her in court but also rebuild her survival strategy both legally and personally. Scott, who had stood by her in past disputes, is no longer a viable option. His lack of fresh strategies, his failure to effectively counter, and his lack of sensitivity to the current situation make him unfit to defend Nina in this battle. And that's when a shocking replacement is revealed. Rick will replace Scott as Nina's new lawyer. This change sends shockwaves through the entire storyline because Rick is not only a character with a complex and scheming past but also someone who has caused countless controversies in the Port Charles community. Nina choosing Rick, a man once considered dangerous, as her legal ally, not only demonstrates desperation but also a clear statement that she is willing to completely change her strategy, from defense to offense. Rick, with his sharp skills, strategic legal thinking, and ability to turn situations seemingly in her favor, could be the deciding factor that helps Nina escape the legal noose, or push her deeper into a confrontation with those who stand for justice. Rick becoming Nina's lawyer is not just a tactical change but also opens a completely new chapter in the plot. This is not just a change in legal representation. It is a total rethinking of how Nina will approach the issues surrounding her. Rick, a man who once operated in the gray areas of the law, breaking ethical norms to achieve results, signifies that Nina has abandoned the path of hoping for forgiveness and has instead embraced the path of fighting to the end to protect her rights, honor, and survival. With Rick, there is no concept of compromise unless it brings the maximum advantage. This makes the relationship between Nina and Rick dangerously compelling, because both have been hurt by the same society, the same system, and now they may become unexpected allies in a fight against it all. This change from Scott to Rick is fueling an entirely new energy into Nina's storyline, creating a new wave of tension for those around her. Willow will surely feel threatened when she learns Rick, someone connected to several underground forces, is now protecting the mother she no longer trusts. Drew, who once held the upper hand, will now face an opponent who cannot be underestimated. Jason, caught in the middle, could be dragged into the fight on both sides, protecting Michael and Willow, but also forced to confront difficult moral choices if Rick reveals unexpected secrets. This change proves that the story is no longer just about whether Nina is guilty or not, but about how far she is willing to go to protect herself. Rick may be the key to her victory, but he could also be the factor that completely destroys her chances of redemption. One thing is certain. The situation is escalating, fascinating, and unpredictable, and General Hospital is entering a phase where every character, every action, could be the spark for an unprecedented upheaval. Nina's choice to place her fate in Rick's hands is not just a legal decision but a life-or-death decision for her very identity. Will she become a victim, or the last survivor? Nina is entering an unforeseen phase in her life, where the boundaries between emotions, logic, and strategy begin to blur. Especially when the man once considered a controversial figure, Rick, now stands as the only one by her side in the midst of this chaotic and confusing moment. While Nina is grappling with the legal consequences, the tension in her relationship with Willow, and the pressure from public opinion, it is Rick, who was once deemed untrustworthy, that brings her a sense of protection, understanding, and, more dangerously, an intense attraction. Something within Nina is changing. And Rick's presence is creating such a powerful shift that it is undeniable. No longer just a professional relationship between client and lawyer. The bond between Nina and Rick is deepening into something uncontrollable. Each time Rick defends her in public, before the press, or in the courtroom, Nina feels a different kind of energy, a decisiveness, boldness, and danger she's never experienced in any past relationship. Rick is not like the other men who have passed through her life. He does not beg for forgiveness, nor does he attempt to fix her, Rick accepts Nina with all her complicated past, irreparable cracks, and distorted calculations driven by fear. It is this acceptance that starts to draw Nina toward him, naturally yet chaotically, as if she is being swallowed by the very dangerous choice she once thought she would never make. The attraction Rick brings is not just physical or from the sharp intelligence of a seasoned lawyer, but from someone who has also endured darkness, much like her. Nina sees herself in Rick's eyes, a person who understands what it is to lose everything, to fight not only to survive but to reclaim lost honor. And this is leading to one of the strongest adjustments Nina has ever faced. She begins to see Rick not only as a protector but as a partner, a half who can rebuild everything from the pieces scattered around them. But at the same time, these feelings create a dangerous mess lurking in every moment they spend together. If Nina and Rick truly cross the line between lawyer and client and become a new power couple in Port Charles, it won't just stir public opinion, it will set off a series of irreversible chain reactions. Willow will feel betrayed more than ever. Michael will have every reason to suspect that Nina's actions are driven by personal gain. Jason will have to reassess his position when he sees Rick, once an enemy, now holding Nina's heart and legal rights. Drew, who is leading the charge against her, will become even more determined to bring her down at all costs. The relationship between Rick and Nina is not just a romantic connection but a strategic partnership, where both know the rules of the power game and are willing to break them if necessary. They understand that together, they can control the media, manipulate public image, and even sway the legal system to achieve their ultimate goal. But that also means they will become the center of attack, targets of revenge plots, and symbols of the danger of unchecked power. If Nina and Rick's story truly progresses in this direction, it will not merely be a shift in their personal relationship but a complete reshaping of the power dynamics in Port Charles. This is one of the adjustments currently unfolding, a quiet shift that is reconfiguring Nina's already fragile world, transforming her from a lost woman into a central figure, seductive, dangerous, and unpredictable. And the only thing clear at this moment is that everything is moving faster than anyone can control, and if Nina and Rick truly become a power couple, Port Charles will never be the same. Because when two people once cast to the bottom by society come together, the only thing that can be certain is bigger confrontations, deeper conspiracies, and an uncontrollable wave of chaos waiting ahead. Sunny and Ava are experiencing a real shock as they face the new and volatile adjustments within the already fragile relationships in Port Charles. Once enemies, then reluctant allies, they now find themselves witnessing a couple rising with formidable influence, Rick and Nina. What puts both Sunny and Ava on high alert is not just Rick's role as Nina's lawyer, but the rapid and reckless change as the two seem to be becoming a power couple, ready to use any tools, from emotions and legal maneuvers to media, to manipulate the situation to their advantage. For Sunny, who once loved Nina and repeatedly warned her about the consequences of manipulating others, it is now a bitter reality that the woman he once trusted is falling into the arms of a man like Rick, a man he has never considered trustworthy. Rick's murky history, his betrayal of the Corinthos family, and his involvement in dangerous legal conspiracies make it impossible for Sunny to ignore this situation. He understands better than anyone that when two people like Rick and Nina join forces, it is not just a personal relationship but a potential threat to the balance of power in Port Charles. Sunny cannot accept a world where Nina, the woman who was once the weakest link, now stands on equal footing with him through her alliance with Rick. For Ava, who is experienced in political games and emotional manipulation, Nina's unexpected turn toward darkness by aligning with Rick is a direct blow to the fragile stability she has been trying to maintain. Ava has never trusted Rick, the man who has exploited women, manipulated situations, and is ready to switch sides if it serves his personal goals. Seeing Nina, the woman who once came to her in tears and pain, now smiling proudly beside Rick in the courthouse, Ava feels betrayed and excluded from a game she thought she controlled. The new mess isn't just about whether the two should be together, it's about Rick and Nina increasingly asserting themselves as a new entity, a new power. They are redefining the power structure, breaking old alliances, and disrupting the already fragile order in Port Charles. If the conflicts used to revolve around Sunny, Ava, Carly, or Jason, Now Rick and Nina are quietly changing the game, and that is making Sunny and Ava lose their bearings. They no longer control the story, no longer predict the next move, and that is what terrifies them. This not only makes Sunny and Ava uneasy but also gives rise to new covert alliances, where those who were once unlikely to cooperate are now looking at each other with a different perspective because they share a common fear. Rick and Nina are becoming an unstoppable force. And right now, things are going too far. It's no longer just small family conflicts, nor simple emotional clashes. A reorganization of power, position, and influence is taking place right in the heart of Port Charles. Sunny and Ava, once at the top, are now being pulled into a battle they no longer control. And without a sufficiently strong adjustment or a decisive reaction, they may soon witness a real storm erupt, a place where they are no longer the ones in control, but mere pawns being swept along. Nina's story is entering a dramatic turning point, where control no longer comes from her own efforts, but from an unexpected and dangerous alliance with a once controversial figure, Rick. After a series of losses, legal accusations, Willow's rejection, and the skeptical gaze of the entire Port Charles community, Nina is no longer the fragile, trembling woman looking for forgiveness. Instead, she is rising from the rubble by grasping something she never truly had, control. And the most ironic thing is that control comes from one of the most unlikely sources of trust, Rick. Rick's arrival is not simply a legal twist in Nina's attempt to defend Drew's drug charges or her fight for access to her grandchild, but also the beginning of one of the new adjustments that is reshaping the entire trajectory of her life. Rick is unlike the other men who have crossed Nina's path. He doesn't offer a sense of salvation. He doesn't make empty promises of redemption or understanding. He simply brings a cold, strategic, pragmatic, and dangerous mindset, exactly what Nina needs to survive. Under Rick's guidance, Nina is slowly learning to restructure her entire being. She no longer acts on impulse. No longer sheds tears when she's pushed aside, no longer tries to beg Willow to reconsider her relationship. Instead, she's learning to use information as a weapon. To turn vulnerability into advantage, to fight back instead of accepting vulnerability. Every move she makes now bears Rick's mark, from her public statements, her court testimony, her approach to the media, to her tactics in dealing with Drew and Sunny. Nina is reclaiming her public image, no longer the silent villain, but a proactive figure stepping into the light, ready to strike back at the very things that once brought her down. But what makes things crazy is not that Nina is rising up, but how she is doing it. Her deepening attachment to Rick, both strategically and emotionally, is causing her life to not only change, but to take a completely new, unpredictable direction. Rick's dangerous allure acts as a catalyst that makes Nina feel stronger, more invulnerable. But at the same time, it is also the beginning of a new wave of explosion, because what Rick brings with him is not just a plan, but a dark past, unresolved grudges, and a reputation that has never been completely cleared. The deeper Nina gets into this relationship, the more she is caught up in a whirlwind where the line between protection and manipulation, between ally and control, is increasingly blurred. She is no longer a passive woman standing behind the scenes, but is gradually becoming a major factor in the new situation of Port Charles. This is making those who used to hold power like Sunny, Ava, Carly or Jason begin to feel insecure. They no longer dare to underestimate Nina, because she is no longer alone. And the change in her, a profound adjustment, is spreading like fire in a dry forest. If Nina was previously pushed out of every power vortex, now she is standing in the eye of the storm, not a victim, but the one who controls the wind. Together with Rick, she is building a new force, a new order, in which she is the center. The one who sets the rules of the game. Every decision made, every action taken is no longer based on emotions, but on strategy. And that's proving that General Hospital is no longer a stage for old names, but is witnessing the astonishing rise of a character who seemed completely broken. Nina's story is no longer a journey to find forgiveness, but a rebirth in the dark. And with Rick by her side, the question is no longer whether she can be good again, but how far she will go to keep her newfound power. One of the biggest changes taking place is that Nina is no longer trying to be someone else, but learning to control the most dangerous, bold, and unexpected version of herself, and that's what makes everyone who once underestimated her now wary.